Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, yWhales. And we have actually one of those certain cases where it's morning for me. I'm just getting my day started, and we got Tim over here in Estonia, and he's just finishing up his Friday. So truly is one of those things where Web3, we can connect anyone and everyone instantly. And the only problem we always kind of suffer with is these time zones, which again, somebody will have to figure out. It's just not going to be me. So we're kind of in mid August right now. It's August 19th as we record this. Bitcoin came up from its low. I think it hit about 18,000.
Mm-hmm.
It just came up to about 24, and looks like Hubai, or we've got some other issues on yet another exchange, and so now Bitcoin's sitting down there at 21 again, and trending down, and all the FUD is rolling in that it's Bitcoin's going to hit 10, 12,000, or whatever the case is, and so it's really again an interesting time. I'd say that the exchanges, and clearly Tim's going to have a lot to say about these things, are kind of, in some cases, there's a lot that are in trouble. It seems like those that leveraged quite a bit over the bull run and allowed people with no real backing to 5, 10, 12, 20x margin on some trades are kind of finding that suddenly liquidity is a little bit harder. The institutional money is dried up for some projects, but it's also flowing in for others. And so I continue going with, as we've had conversations over the last 45 to 60 days since the Terra Luna meltdown. It's been really interesting to watch the builders just become absolutely hyper focused on the future, and a lot of the FUD and a lot of the I would say projects that are nothing but hopes and dreams have kind of fallen off to the side because there was no real science, there was no real logic behind the plate, and so we really kind of have a lot going on there, So really excited for what we're going to talk about. But let's go ahead and Tim, let's talk about your backstory, where you come from, and what brought you here today.
Okay, so just on that, thank God I don't have to get up at 8 o'clock in the morning to do a podcast. So I appreciate being in front in Europe in that time zone. Interestingly, about time zones, we operate across offices in Melbourne, Perth, Manila, Dubai, obviously Estonia, Lisbon, London, Malta, and Sao Paulo. So it really is a difficult thing these days to try and manage all those time zones and manage all those meetings. But certainly it's great that technology is there that we can do this and do it all properly. So it's always good. Where I come from, born and raised in Melbourne in Australia. Went to University of Melbourne and did my computer science and commerce degree there. But I did my MBA at Crown Casino in the poker room, and I caught the poker wave back in '99 and absolutely loved it, and actually wrote my thesis on online poker back before it was all going, and that really excited me. Finishing university, when all my mates went to be lawyers or doctors or accountants and whatnot, I bought a one-way ticket to Hong Kong and then a train to Moscow, and took 206 hours and ended up playing in the Moscow Poker Championships in 2002. I had a month there. A mate of mine ran a poker room there. Absolutely loved it, and then came across to Estonia, and I thought I'd come here for 6 months, 12 months, play some cards, and then try and position myself in Eastern Europe before the poker boom, which had been in America and Australia at the time. Before that came to Eastern Europe, trying to position myself here, and then build up a really, really good tech sort of team operating from Estonia. Very interestingly, this is where Skype, well, previously Kazaa, but Skype was formed and generated. This is where TransferWise came out, Pipedrive came out, Playtech, something big in the gaming industry. So it's been, there's a lack of natural resource in Estonia. So the government in the sort of mid-90s, coming out of the Soviet bloc, really invested heavily on fiber optic cable, making IT as a part of the school program. So you're learning CSS when you're 7 years old at school. You're learning Java, you're learning database design and everything. It's a real part of the curriculum, to the extent now where 97% of banking is all online banking in Estonia. So there was a very forward and progressive mindset on how to build technology through that time. And fast forward, we were involved in poker for a good 10 to 12 years, predominantly as an affiliate originally, and then as an operator. Then there was a meltdown in the poker world which caused a lot of problems from liquidity, a little bit like the exchanges we're seeing in the crypto world at the moment. But the interesting point for me was, I think it was Christmas 2013. We're having our Christmas dinner, 30 staff at the time. And I remember I said to the team, we're smart people, we're innovative, we're hungry, we can do anything we dream of if only we can control the money. And my CTO, who's been with me for 20 years, Time Rayo, said, well, what about Bitcoin? And we're like, what the hell is Bitcoin in 2013? Within a month, we had a debt from one of the poker operators. We wrote that debt off, took the source code out of escrow, and we launched a poker network using Bitcoin native wallet. And we launched Coin Poker in January 2014, put some slot games on the side of the poker. And within 3 months, we turned the poker off and we launched Bit Casino. And interestingly, from that gaming perspective, we'd had experience on how to run a poker room as opposed to the backyard operators like those like Prime Dice and Satoshi Dice and all those very early games. They were sort of put together on a shoestring. We actually had the infrastructure and know how to run proper customer support, payments and financials and whatnot. And we grew our casino from there, and just everything we earned, we put straight back in, and we just put the head down and we built very, very hard. To the extent where in 2016 we launched sportsbet.io, and then as of 2022 now, we're 850 people and 14 offices around the world, and enjoying being part of the ecosystem. And I don't know if I could say leading the crypto adoption throughout the world, but I think gambling certainly is a very significant part of usage of cryptocurrency. If done correctly and done well, we can certainly influence how people can find a utility with crypto, and that's what we certainly enjoy doing to this day forward.
Wow, so number one, I did not know much about, in any way, shape, or form, I did not know much about Estonia. And so just real quick, I took a quick peek, and, really about the estimated population is only about 1.3 million. So,
Yeah.
So very small. Your GDP is 60 billion, which again is relatively small. I mean, that was, almost the size of Terra Luna's implosion. And so it's amazing to hear that there's essentially this civilization sitting there around that's been focused for a few decades on technology. And that you're using that kind of hub of innovation. And just as a real quick note, just out of my own curiosity, when you do have schools that are teaching code, when you do have kind of institutions that are focused on kind of the Web2 asset class, how's it been hiring and growing in a country like that? Are they friendly towards innovation in cryptocurrencies, or what's their kind of standpoint?
So let me open the can of proverbial worms. In regard to the people who want to work in this area of technology, it's thriving. It really has been, and obviously costs have gone up in terms of programmers. It was much more cost efficient 20 years ago, but this is seen as sort of a channel for the students and university students and the startups. I think there's more startups per capita here in Estonia than anywhere else in Europe. Yet it's a small nation, but for me personally, being able to live in Europe and find a home, I'm 2.5 hours from London. I'm 4 hours from Barcelona. 2 hours from Frankfurt. It's close enough to be a part, but I always say Estonia it's small enough to know a lot of people, but big enough to do your own thing at the same time. So if you want to put your head down and work, you can certainly do it and not distracted. But if you want to go out for a party on a Friday night, it's certainly very possible as well. Back onto the let's call it the government perspective of it all. Estonia has been known as Estonia for many, many years. It's got the national identity card that everything's tied to. You go to the doctor and you need to get your antibiotics. You don't get written a prescription anymore. You go to the pharmacy and you give your national ID card and your prescription's on there. Now, this is all tax is done within 2 minutes, all done from online. Parking fines, every government service has been onboarded onto their, let's call it, intranet, and it's called the X Road. Now, what's very interesting and what would probably scare a lot of people is that who's watching Big Brother at the end of the day? And this is, if we go back to an Orwellian type of mindset, what it allows in Estonia, citizens are allowed to look up who has been looking at their data. And that's all available on a private internet structure that you log in with your ID card. And then you can see who is looking up, and you can then ask, why are you looking at my data? So the citizens become big brother, which is the way I believe it should be. There was an issue back in 2007 with a Russian monument moving. There was a big riot here. The Estonian government then went and they backed up the entire country onto data servers in Luxembourg. So it's a very forward-thinking way of how to do things. Or property transaction, notary transactions, everything is already online. Now, it's not exactly on a public blockchain, but certainly it's a private blockchain run by the government, but they've opened up the necessary access to the citizens to ensure it's done at the highest level of integrity that citizens would expect.
Is it a blockchain or a database?
Database, but a blockchain is a public database. But yeah, it's a database, exactly. Okay. Although these days they call it a blockchain because it's cooler. So
yeah, listen, I was about to be I was like, holy cow, they've converted over. So the reason I think that that's so interesting, the reason I want to take a second to talk about that is because when we're talking about Web3, we're still talking about very early. And for you to say, back in 2013, 2014, that you believed in Bitcoin as a true transfer of wealth and currency and store of asset, like, congratulations, you get OG status, and really been one of the innovators of the space. I think one of the reasons that I'm going to also kind of point that you've got a lot of things going on for you is because you live in the future. You live in a country that has already gone ahead and digitized, back in the Web 1, everything. Web 2 era, and made it happen. And so, while a closed database, and there are, there's transparency, and I love hearing that. I love hearing, who watches the watchers. That's really the way it should be, because we don't have that here in the United States. I really want to get started. Otherwise the NSA, I'm sure will pay me a visit. But the core concept that you already kind of live in this digital future, that everything exists, it makes it so much easier to facilitate and think about what it will be like on a blockchain, whether that's a public or private blockchain. And I think there's room in the world for both types of things. But that core concept that the data is out there. That you don't need to have permission to read it. In some cases you do, in some cases you don't. But at the very most, no one can adjust it or change it behind your back, because there's once it's written, it's there in stone. And if someone made a mistake, which happens, what was the correction and why was it made? So I love the thought of you kind of living in this kind of little bubble future of which you get to tell us all how it's going to operate.
Well, I think it's important because, you've mentioned the population is 1.3 million people. The whole country is on the internet and was on the internet from 15, 20 years ago. So there is a desire there's an expectation that it's a public utility to have access to the internet. Like a public road, you have access, everything will be done on the internet. And it's not some scary concept. I know in Australia they had a national broadband network, which is an absolute fallacy, and struggled to get rolled out. Estonia is a small country that you can implement change and you can drive innovation, and you don't have to convince 250 million people or 300 million people in America. You've got 1.3 million people who need to do it and follow it. So in terms of being able to sort of put good systems in place and avoid those entry barriers to change, Estonia has done really, really well. And I think people here love being part of Estonia. They really subscribe to that digital identity, and being a part of that, that's what we can take to the world in Estonia.
I love that. That's fabulous. So with all this innovation, with all this kind of history, talk about what you've built. And there's more than one thing. You've done so much.
Yeah, so we've had the gaming sites for the last 8-9 years, and to the extent where we're now the shirt sponsor of Southampton in the English Premier League, and also a partner of Arsenal, and also Flamengo and Sao Paulo in Brazil. So we've been able to. One of the really, really cool things, we first sponsored Watford in the English Premier League, and we had the front of shirt. And then the CEO, called me and said, "Do you want the sleeve? Something on the sleeve?" I'm like, "No, we've spent enough. We don't need that. It's all right." And then a day later, I called him back and said, "Actually, we do. We want to put a Bitcoin logo on the sleeve." And we did that really to show the community that we want to be part of the community, and we're part of growing the adoption of crypto throughout the world, not just here to try and make money from it, which obviously is a consequence of doing something good, but it's not our primary concern of what we're trying to achieve here. So within the company, there is a great desire to lead the charge in how crypto will change people's lives and how we will transact digitally across the world. And the greatest one for me is, obviously, you can have 8 decimal points of precision. Why should you be stuck with 2 decimal points of precision when the world is a lot more detailed in that regard? So using crypto like that sensibly is a smart way forward at the end of the day to ensure we give the customers the best possible experience. I digress, however. Sorry. Moving forward, we've built this and we did pretty well out of it. And we started looking at the greater ecosystem around our B2C sites. And we thought, well, perhaps potentially we should start investing in some slot companies or some trading engines, or how do we move money better? How do we trade crypto better? And we started up Yolo Investments, which is basically a family office of the Yolo Group, to invest absolutely around the circle of products that we have. So we've now invested in a number of different banks in UK, Luxembourg, Dubai, Singapore, and Philippines. We're trying to create a ramp using Lightning to move money and sort of bypass the SWIFT network and actually have any market participant be a part of that network. Now, we just have to be the chicken, not the egg, and we will bring our banks first into there and then onboard all the merchants we're working with and try and gather the attention and the usage of the Lightning network, which I think is an amazing product or concept which is coming to reality. We've invested in lots of slot companies, insurance, OTC traders, a lot of Web3 crypto assets as well, and innovations. And our focus is quite simply on gaming, fintech, and crypto. That's what we know best. And as a VC these days, it's people say, what can you offer us if you invest into us? And it's like, I can help you avoid the mistakes I made, because I made a shitload of mistakes and I'm going to help you avoid them. And that itself should be strategic enough value, not just capital itself, but strategic advice on how to take a business forward and grow it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say that hearing just that brief amount of the story and looking at the investments you're making and talking about the utter hatred for the SWIFT system, which is still running on dial-up modems in some cases.
Dot matrix printers as well.
Yeah, and clearly, the value add as a VC, which you pointed out, is a huge one because you have the experience. And so banks can, they can make money magically appear. They can do lots of things that they want. But certainly the way you've kind of positioned yourself and YOLO, fabulous name, is that the ability to help people navigate into this digital space. Yep. And, for you to be the connector, the networker per se of, here's how we're going to help you on road into the next version. And, again, we're still talking about an unregulated, asset class, cryptocurrencies and blockchain, while there's certain restrictions here and there, for the most part, it's largely unregulated. And banking is the opposite. It is heavily regulated. It takes, a decade to make any sort of changes. So even if they say today, we're done with SWIFT, we have no interest in this, we're going to go blockchain, and here's the blockchain we're going to use, which is X, Y, and Z, it could be 6 to 10 years before they actually are able to make that change over.
Look, it's interesting. I remember when Ripple first came out and it was meant to be the SWIFT beta that magically charged every bank $1 million a month to be part of the network. With great concept, and it's still around these days. I don't know exactly what it does, but the coins are still around. I think we don't want to stop using SWIFT. We want to provide an alternative. We don't want to change the system. We simply want to say, here is a better way we think you can do things. And if you want to join us, you're very welcome to. But we're not government haters. We're very regulated in terms of our investment fund, in terms of banks. It's all very regulated area to be in. And I don't think you can progress trying to say, well, we don't think much about regulation, we're going to ignore it and do it from BVI or wherever, Vanuatu or whatnot. We actually, to be a participant in the market economy, you need to follow the guidelines, however silly they may be, but we need to follow them and act within them, but at least try and disrupt and innovate within that framework, which is somewhat acceptable. What disappoints me is, and I saw a picture today of a banking summit, and on the picture, there was, Houston, we have a $5 trillion problem. And then it started going through about the valuation of the crypto markets and the NFTs and whatever else. And this is a group of bankers going, we've got a problem, we don't know what to do about it. My answer would be, banks, get on the stage. Don't be a Kodak. You need to push forward and not be scared of change. You need to adopt and be a part of it and lead the challenge. It sort of comes back to people in gambling or porn or wherever else. This has always been I'm giving myself a bad name here, but this is where the real technical innovation takes place, because we need to find ways to satisfy customers' desires. We will find ways, and crypto has been the most beautiful digital gambling chip I've ever seen in my whole life. In my opinion, crypto is not an investment asset whatsoever. It's a trusted unit, but it's a trusted piece of value between two untrusted parties that all parties can rely on, that it won't lose its tangible value at that point in time. And really, this should have been happening 50, 60, 100 years ago from a banking system coming out of Medici's in the 1600s. But guess what? We are here now, and this is the way it needs to be. And people need to stop resisting that and actually go, for some parts of my digital life, this is a better way of doing it. I can't believe people still use credit cards on the internet, typing in numbers. And you type it in, I'm going to go and grab my card, type in the CVC. MetaMask, open, click, send. There's a world of difference.
Yeah, so there's a few points I'd like to make on that on that statement, and I agree with you in most parts. Number one, I think when people say when is crypto's kind of like coming of age going to be, I think it's going to be when you can see it on your bank account. When you can look and say, here's my checking, here's my savings, here's my Bitcoin, here's my shit coins. That's real now. I can absolutely facilitate and say that it's transactionable and everything else. The concern I have is these there's no wallet in crypto. Like in MetaMask, while it works, and you are absolutely more than familiar with it, I'm sure your staff is. I train people every single day. I'm sure you educate as well as around the world on MetaMask, and I just feel like there's some base level of regulation that's needed to create a fair playing field. Meaning, you can't intentionally lie. You have to be able to have some base levels of recording. I mean, we just saw what happened with 3 Arrows Capital and Voyager and Celsius, and the list kind of goes on because they weren't being transparent. They were hopeful. They were very hopeful. The sky is blue, and the rocket ship was certainly moving up, but they weren't clear about the problems they had underneath the hood, and that kind of gave a false pretense of safety. And then the other side of it is just the overall. Basically, I don't see a single wallet that's worth anything. And I'm not knocking on MetaMask. I'm not saying anything else. I'm just saying there's too much risk. Every single week I hear about people that have lost their funds. And some of these people are incredibly well versed. And we saw it the other day. There's hacks that appear and everything else. And so I agree with you that I would love the thought of a Web3, transactions. I think they're great. I love Phantom wallet. I think it's a really, really good product. But I'm still like, every time I open my wallet or anything else, like I'm freaking out.
The money's still there.
I'm like, okay. It's it's there. So it's not, the credit card, like, somebody steals it, I punch that number and somebody steals the number, steals the thing. Like, I can call the bank, I can dispute it. It's not my problem. And crypto's just, we got to figure out what that layer is of trust.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a couple of different ways to look at it. Ultimately, to be your own bank, it's a non-custodial wallet. You own control of your private keys. If you're not in control of the private keys, you don't own the money. You simply got an IOU. But the world, unfortunately, is not ready for that type of responsibility. So you need to have a custodial wallet with a help number, a 1-800 number that you can call. I've lost my money. What do I do? Because there are a lot of people who are not ready for that responsibility. And this is where banks can come in and make ridiculous amounts of money. So maybe that wallet needs to be, here is your custodial onboarding, and then here is your Treasury with your own private keys and how to do it. Now, I don't think people should be keeping net wealth in a single wallet. I think people need to learn how to use Treasuries and safes and whatnot, or the Fireblocks of the world, which in essence is non-custodial. We're very happy customers of Fireblocks, and we use them for our institutional treasury management, and this is a great solution. And our biggest question was, if we lose some of the keys, what happens and how does that go? And I forget the technical, I think it was an MPAC or something like that, how they work it all out. Anyway, my CTO was very, very happy with it when we finally got to the detail. He goes, yes, good. So how do you bring that back to a retail level to make it work? Perhaps crypto should be for the money you carry in your wallet. So if I've got my wallet over here with 500 euros in it, if I lose my wallet, I lose my money. So perhaps I need to limit how much money I carry in my wallet and not keep 4.5 million euros in my wallet. Not that they'd fit in there, but you know what I mean? The same type of people need to understand that it's not just one crypto wallet. You need to have different levels of safety and security. And the more easy it is to use, the less privacy and control you have over that money. And the harder it is to use, the more security you have over your money. What's the balance there, and how do you find what that? So my MetaMask, I kept $1,000 in it, so I can click, good to go. If I need to top it up from my Tracer, I'll do that, and I'm happy.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I mean, we yWhales is on Fireblocks as well, and we went through the long onboarding process, and I equate that as that's the F1.
Yep.
It is beautiful. It is gorgeous. It is very well done. There's more features and buttons and things than you could ever think about. And any kind of facilitating these transactions and multi-sig and everything else, it just works. And I feel very secure with it. And by the way, it's also insured the way it should be. But it's $60,000 a year, so it's not affordable for most people that want to do this. And there's no Genosis. Sorry, it doesn't work. And it causes more problems than it needs. And so I think there's been some stuff there. But I think when we can get that $60,000 down to $600 for even a better product, that's the way innovation works. Fireblocks is still building this thing and going and scaling. I don't know how many clients they have, but I'm sure it's in the thousands, maybe tens of thousands, but it's not much. But that concept and that solution, that's what we hope out of these bear markets, is that suddenly the people that were making money, they weren't making money, they were on these projects, suddenly turn around and go, what was the things that really didn't work during that last bull run? And truly, it is very hard to onboard people into crypto for the reasons that we just talked about. So,
sorry, yeah.
No, I
was just going to say, I agree with you. And like, one of our biggest issues is how do we convert someone from being a fiat player to a crypto player, and what's the benefit? And I always go back to the adage that we always just ring up the taxi company and order a cab. I have to work out the address and have the money and get the change and give the tip. I had my parents over and we were in Moscow, I think, and I showed Dad Uber and we used Uber, and all of a sudden we didn't have to talk to the taxi driver, put our pins in, paid from a credit card, and we got to our destination. Now, from that point forward, once you got over that barrier of entry, being scared, then you can use it. Then you'll never use the old-fashioned way of doing it again. So it's almost a hand-holding exercise on getting people comfortable with the technology. But I don't know, you look at WeChat. They've had WeChat Pay for, 8-10 years now, and most of the Chinese economy uses WeChat Pay for its payments. GrabPay in Indonesia, Malaysia. I almost think America and Europe especially is a little bit behind the times with that sort of digital adoption. The one I'm most excited about, we're invested into a company called Jamba, which is an African Web3 play, which is going out to universities, onboarding people into a Web3 wallet, letting them play an Axie Infinity type game, giving them a chance to make their $20, $30 a day, but actually have a thriving economy of buying. Merchants will have their QR codes and their Jamba wallet as well, and trying to build up little economies all the way around, and then build up the infrastructure so the money can flow in a circular fashion. Hugely exciting. And Africa doesn't have that middleware, if I can call it, which is internet banking, which is checkbooks, which is what we've grown up on using. So potentially it bypasses that and goes to a world where they only know that wallet with that USDT or that Ethereum is the way we transact, because they've never had the opportunity in their inflationary fiat currency world to actually have proper bank accounts like we know it these days. So maybe that Africa, India, subcontinent, Southeast Asia, maybe that leads the future of the next 10 or 20 years of adoption of crypto. And we all sit back in 10 years and go, wow, how did we miss out? Why didn't we see that happening? Type question.
Yeah, and I see a lot of people do look at it, and then I always like to compare. Web3 you can compare to Web 1. I don't think you can compare it to Web 2 because it's
Hmm.
so dynamically different. It's not an evolution of; it's almost a complete rebuild of the web, and the infrastructure there. And so but remember, I mean, you were there. In the mid to late '90s, if you said you put your credit card in online, people were like, "Oh my God, why would you ever do that? You're crazy. Why you don't do that. It's going to get stolen or whatever the case was." And it was so out there to think that you could do a credit card transaction. And now, post COVID, people are like, you went to a store? Like, are you
Yeah.
insane? Why would you walk into a physical place where you could just put your credit card in a line and make it happen? So it just takes, it takes time, for people to change and for generations. I'm 40, I'm mid 40s. So, I kind of grew up with Web 1, and I understand how to use it. I feel safe with it. I can absolutely interact. So I've been on, doing credit card transactions since, the early 2000s. And I actually looked yesterday, my eBay account was opened in 2002.
And when
And
did you
so
open
it's,
your Yahoo.com email
yeah,
back
yeah,
in the
yeah.
day
And
as
so you
well?
just
Yeah,
kind of grow up with
cool.
these things. And so I feel like a lot of the infrastructure that we're building today in Web 3 is really designed for the Gen Zs. They're the ones that are going to bring that mainstream adoption because they want a digital life already. They already feel that they have a digital life. They just don't own their digital life today.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And you look at sort of. I grew up on Facebook around that time. I'm mid 40s as well, and now you look at the younger generation. It is YouTube and TikTok, and honestly, it dominates their life. And
Mhm.
I'm personally disgusted by it because I grew up riding my bicycle and playing cricket in Australia, out swimming in the sea, going surfing. And here's a different way of life. But maybe this is unfortunately where it's getting to, that you are connected so easily by different things, and that 30-second TikTok video is quite engaging, or maybe it's short attention spans, I'm not quite sure. Going back to the days of Netscape and Dogpile and Yahoo, uh, another one I can't remember, but things have changed rapidly, and you wouldn't believe what Netscape looked like. If you look at a Chrome browser now, go back to Netscape, how could you use that? Well, imagine 5 years when we've all got a safe Google or Apple crypto wallet,
Yeah.
which people have been onboarded by. My God, how could you use myetherwallet.com? We will look back, but this is the evolutionary process. It's not an overnight process. It happens over time. And the people who have the best product and the best looking out, put the customer first, and people will naturally radiate towards that. So I think the key to the crypto evolution, whichever lution you want to have in there, will be a Google or an Apple, or I honestly thought DM from Meta would be a world game changer. I was thought that how brilliant could it be, changing the whole economy. But they've got pressure from the people upstairs that said you can't ruin the US monetary policy, guys, so stop doing what you're doing. But when a Google does it, like if you think about Apple Pay and people have got all these credit cards, you can now bring those credit cards into Apple Pay. You can go to an NFT, or not NFT, the NFIC reader, double
Yep.
click and pay. It's a secure transaction because I trust Apple, it will trust me. Smart business model. Imagine getting a crypto wallet in there as well and letting that evolve and adopt. That would bring you security, the safety, all logged in via a secure Apple login. Bob's
Yep.
your uncle.
Yeah, and listen, we've already seen a little bit of this. HTC has a couple cell phones
Mm-hmm.
out that have dedicated hardware chips specifically for cryptography and designed for cryptocurrency security, because to eliminate a little bit of hacking. And we've seen this before. Like Samsung or HTC comes out with like, hey, we're gonna have 2 cameras, and Apple's like sticking with their one, and they're just like, oh yeah, whatever. And then a few years later, suddenly like Apple's got 3 cameras, and it's like,
Yes.
and suddenly it's a thing. And so I still sit here and say we're early. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you were ultra early, and I'm sure back in you launched in 14, and I'm sure you're thinking around 17 when the bull run was going. You're like, here it is, here it goes. We're gonna we're gonna have 5 billion people that are gonna be on cryptocurrency with it by the end of the year, and then no.
Interestingly, when the price goes down, we find the players play more. So you mentioned 3 arrows and whatnot, and I think the problem with that is people get very, very greedy very, very quickly without having a good, sustainable, long-term view of what they're trying to achieve. And when money's cheap and you can leverage and everything's going up, everybody jumps on it because I think, here's my free lottery ticket, thanks very much. Our treasury policy has been very easy. Every week we balance up to be 50-50. 50% crypto, 50% fiat. And it's basically a dollar cost averaging process because we have real life expenses and employees and whatnot. You can't gamble with that. So we've done this for, what are we now, 8 years, 9 years, and we maybe haven't maximized when the coins went up too much, but it's enough to enjoy the upside, enough to protect the downside, that we found this to be a very good strategy from a long-term growth perspective. And I just think others get very greedy and think they can jump in there, leverage at 100x, and everything's going to go up. Well, I bought shit coins as well because I thought, well, I'm not going to miss out on this, and now I've got a pile of them in Exodus. But that's part of the learning process, you know.
Yeah, and speaking of Exodus, I actually do think that's a fabulous wallet.
Brilliant. Yeah.
It is a hot wallet they've got there, but for anyone that's kind of new, looking at, what do I want to do? It doesn't interconnect. You can't. It's just a storage facility. It's you can't make on-chain transactions, and their DeFi integrations are absolutely horrible. But I do think it's a good interface. So I'm just gonna I give credit where credit's due, and then I knock on everyone else. So jumping back over, because I really want to talk about kind of the betting, and you made a couple of good points that. There's always a few industries that lead adoption. Porn is one, gambling is the other, and it's because people kind of, again, there's the demand, and then there's also the kind of facilitating and the ease of use. And in gambling across the board, and I only know a little bit about it, so you're going to have to help educate me and the viewers. It's really hard to deal with because a lot of credit card companies aren't interested in it. There's a lot of global restrictions and whatnot. So it makes sense to use the crypto rails.
So the number one thing you got to remember in gambling, it's classed as a 7995 MCC code with credit cards, and not every acquiring bank likes to accept it. So look, the whole essence around gambling, you go and play poker in the casino, if you win, you're going to get paid out immediately. And my philosophy has always been very similar to Benny Binion, who ran the Horseshoe in Vegas, that you hit $1 million at the front when you walked in off Fremont Street. So if you won big, and this is, I go back 30 years ago, there's the money we can pay you. And if you lost, if you lost your money, we'll give you a steak and egg breakfast, and so you can at least leave the casino with a full belly, and you've been somewhat entertained. Because gambling should only be entertainment; it shouldn't be putting everything at risk on the turn of a number. Yep. So our philosophy has been very simple marketing. If you win $1 or $1 million or $10 million, we'll pay you in 1 minute. And we've done that the whole way through. Unfortunately, in the banking rails of the world with credit cards and payments, that is impossible, number one, and bloody expensive, number two. So that's the biggest issue. In the end of the day, gambling is simply an e-commerce transaction, but the money moves in and out, and a gambler likes to hold the chips if he's won. We calculated scientifically, within 6 hours, someone wins 200 grand, within 6 hours, the money's going to come back in the Fibonacci sequence. And it's unbelievable. So I had to teach the support staff here, it's a temporary loan. Let's send him a bottle of champagne as well and congratulate him, because it's a 51-49% coin flip. And if the 49% player has got lucky in one, we should be happy for them, because they want to enjoy that entertainment in the future. So crypto just made an amazing rails for two really important reasons. One, money could fly back and forth 20 times a day with no fees. If you're doing that with credit cards at 4.5% in and 2.5% out, it's going to eat up that money on merchant payment processing, which is, the operator is not going to want to do that. But number two, from our perspective, when someone made a deposit, we use chain analysis to immediately go and understand how much money's in there, when they buy, where they buy from our KYC perspective. If money's coming from FTX or Binance or an exchange, we know they've been through a KYC process. So we're happy with that sort of passport of KYC. But also, what's our share of wallet? Are they playing with our competitors, and how much is coming to us? So the most amazing amount of intelligence comes from chain analysis. One, to understand our customers, which is really important from the AML KYC perspective. More so than if someone's using a credit card, we can understand their financial history better. But two, how can we treat them to the best possible experience and kind of maximize our opportunity, if I can call it that? So it's brought financial transparency to us between two pseudonymous parties. We now understand doesn't really matter what their name is. Who are they and what's in their account? We can see that, and we can provide the relevant experience for them. So that's how we've used it to sort of transform what we believe what was wrong with the gaming industry, and how to take that forward. Now, obviously, there's certain government restrictions and licenses, and we have licenses from Australia, England, Isle of Man, Malta, Curacao, Estonia, all over, Brazil, Mexico, Argentina. But there's some countries, obviously sanctioned countries, we can't work in. We don't touch the American market at all. We've got other investments who have got American licenses going in. So there's still, my fundamental issue is still very geographically based, because traditionally you go to a lottery and buy a ticket at the 7-Eleven in that state or in that country, and the tax would go to the relevant authority. Coming online, it's a horizontal base that actually, where is the point of consumption, or where is the transaction struck? Where should the tax be? And I like paying tax and keeping men in black suits happy. Don't get me wrong.
Hey, we got 80,000 new black suits coming here in the U.S. So.
I read that, but how do we know who to pay the tax to? Where is the point of consumption taking place? Is it on the server? But hang on, we've got cloud services, AWS and CloudFront or whatever around the world, and not dedicated, but cloud hosting. Is it where the transactions happen from the money coming in? It's a very complicated environment. I even think this whole new digital age, where is an NFT being bought? As simple as that, because there's nothing tangible in the NFT. There's nothing tangible that you can hold on to in the crypto, but there's an economic transaction. Where am I paying tax on the growth of that NFT? Is it my country of residence or whatnot? So it's a lot of questions to answer, and we try and keep pushing forward on that. But hugely interesting industry.
Yeah, and I want to point out something here for people that don't understand how complicated this can be. And you have employees all around the world, correct, Tim?
Yep.
So you have international payroll, and I'll say, I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis of our experience, because traditionally all my companies have been in the United States, and even if they're not in the same state I'm in, it's relatively easy to transact. And as we built yWhales, suddenly we're decentralized and we have employees really scattered around the world, and I realized something, and that the entire banking system of which it operates today on Swift is designed, first and foremost, to collect taxes.
Yep.
So when we have, I have an employee in Canada, and it's right there, not far away. I know exactly how much I need to pay this person. Here's the salary. Here's what needs to be paid. And in 9 seconds, we can do that on crypto. Done. Mm-hmm. Here, it's money is sent. It's in their bank account. They can go buy bread with it. They can do whatever they want with it. It's over and done. That's not the way it works for payroll. You have to send the money to, the payroll company you have to wire the money to an account. Then it has to go into these various government's accounts and filter down, so that each step along the way, they're pulling their taxes out through all these various transactions. And by the way, you have to start 5 to 7 days early on saying this is what you want to do and down the pipe you want to go. Yep. It's an incredibly heavy and frustrating transaction to do. And the reality was, when I said I called the international payroll company, I said, I have no issue paying the taxes. I can see right here where they're listed. Tell me where to send the money, and I will, this
do it
person
faster.
is being paid,
yeah.
And I will drop all of them. I will mail them checks. I don't care, but I don't want to go through this 7-day process of nonsense every time to declare I'm about to pay someone. Get ready, here comes some money. It's smart contracts can just solve all of this. But I don't know what it's going to take to get there.
You're right. It's how do you move a government agency online? Now, again, from the gambling world, we've got a license in the Northern Territory, up in Darwin, with 2 gambling licenses there. And we've been pushing them to accept crypto and Australian licensed gambling offer. Now they've finally published their first white paper about what cryptocurrency might look like. And I'm like, yes, finally, great. But in this paper, and I hope none of the lovely gents from Darwin are listening to this, they said, you can only send money from one Bitcoin address, and the money must go back to that Bitcoin address. I said, but you've got to have an address mutation. You can't use the seed address every single time. Sure, there's clustering, but there's a lack of knowledge. But I congratulate them for putting a paper out to the people like me to give good, proper industry feedback about how it works. And I've helped many governments, gaming regulators, with understanding this. To answer your question about payroll, my biggest issue there is it's digital in the first place.
Yeah.
You're not actually getting a wheelbarrow of cash and going over to Toronto and dropping the cash off. It's a digital transaction. So where is that 5 and 7 days, and who is earning interest on that money for that 5 and 7 days until it's in your employer's bank account?
Yeah.
And this is the question people need to be asking.
It's nuts. And, you know, again, I want to pivot back over to some of the work that you've done, because you guys you do a lot of education. And I think that that's one of the biggest things we see, because I will say there's a lot of times, you know, in the US, Canada just put out a thing that, like, here's the 4 approved cryptocurrencies of which you can buy unlimited amounts of, and Bitcoin Cash is one of them. And I just,
oh bloody hell,
that's what I'm saying. You got Bitcoin, you got Ethereum, there's one other, and then there's like Bitcoin Cash. And I just go, this is why we're not even close to mainstream adoption, is because until the regulators understand what they're doing, and I'm going to go and say this, the lobbyists have no idea what they're talking about. And then you go even a step further, and the quote unquote experts that were heavy into the asset class 3, 4, 5 years ago, that have done nothing since, and quite simply running around as consultants. Like, that's how you get Bitcoin Cash being an approved, you know, one of the 5 approved cryptocurrencies of which Canadians can now, you know, own and operate, is because somebody just has no idea what they're talking about. And
maybe Kelvin Air's been pushing it quite strongly in Canada and got it in there for some silly reason.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it goes entirely against their entire thing of, like, eliminating a proof of work. I mean, like, you chose like the one shitcoin that still operates on proof of work.
Yep. We're very strong believers. We've done well in the crypto and the gaming world, no doubt about it. So a very big part of our organisation is focused on growing the adoption of crypto. We launched the site learncrypto.com, non-profit. And we're really trying to, it's like rabbit hole that XYZ. We want to take this out to the users we have, and how do we onboard more people into the world that we love, bottom line. And, you know, how do we work with organizations who want to learn more about crypto? So Arsenal rang us up and said, we know you're doing Learn Crypto. Can you come in and do a seminar for our staff about how to use crypto? So we sent 2 guys over, and 80 people from the Arsenal Football Club organisation rocked up to learn and go through our seminar, which includes getting your Exodus wallet, getting your MetaMask wallet, making your first transactions, buying your first NFT. And look, if we can change one person, then we've succeeded, is the bottom line. And again, we don't want to stamp out or stop SWIFT or banking. That's still going to remain for the next 150 years, whatever, but at least give people a viable alternative to see the light and transact better at the end of the day. Because it should be, if I had to send my dad in Australia money, Dad, what's your thing? Bang, click, done. I remember a very funny story. Back in the day, I was big on Bitcoin talk, obviously, and someone came up and said, I'm at a bar in Paris and I can pay with crypto. This is about 2015. And some guy in Miami goes, whoa, man, show me the QR code. I'm going to buy you a beer. And then so the guy's got the QR code, took a photo, and the guy in Miami's paid for the beer. And like, there was almost this crowd community excitement that this transaction, I've bought someone a beer from across the other side of the world, which would never be possible in a traditional finance perspective. But just let that, imagine back then, imagine what we can do in the future if this can already happen now. And it was a really exciting thing to see the evolution of how money moves around the world.
In 2015, how many Bitcoin was that beer, and what was that worth today?
Oh, I reckon probably about mid $500 thereabouts. I bought my first 4 Bitcoins in September 2013 from Bitstamp, and it cost me 175 euros per Bitcoin. And fortunately, I have never had to buy any more afterwards. But that was Bitstamp back in the day. It was a great exchange. But yeah, look, I'm almost scared with how the crypto valuations go up and down. And yes, the price goes up. It's all demand and supply. I completely understand that. But I'm still unsure of what people are buying and what is then signifying what this price. I think there needs to be utility behind a coin, behind an NFT. It's not the end piece of tangible asset. It should be a derivative of dividends. It should be yield from rental on your property, and you're earning a yield and you're being paid that way. Smart contract, obviously, again. It shouldn't just be I'm buying a coin and it's going to magically go up and I'm going to make money, because that just smells like Ponzi schemes and scams and whatever else. And I think gives crypto a bad name, honestly speaking. So I would like it to be as flat as possible, and have good, sensible growth over the long term, which is how wealth is actually really created. It's called compound interest, and everyone should know it and everyone should do it, and not get greedy and have this quick mindset. But maybe the world we live in is so quick and moving so fast that people want quick results. And that's where, well, maybe that's what sparks a market that the smart investors can get in and out at the right time. I don't know.
Yeah, listen, there's no right answer on it, but clearly you've been in the space for a while. You've watched it. You've done very well with it, and you've been a great innovator in this space. The other thing I just kind of want to point out and just get your opinion on real quick is play to earn. Play to live,
Yep.
as I think I've heard of it. And I see you're very involved in Africa and a number of kind of emerging markets. There's kind of conflicted reports on is Axie Infinity the end all be all. I think it's boring and cute, but it's changed people's lives for the better. And I think that's the most important thing, is that you're able to take somebody out of the rice fields, out of the sweatshops, out of these horrible conditions, and teach them something that then can turn into something going forward. And we've talked to Gabby with YGG, and really heard how he thinks about the entire asset class. And we've talked to Palamas and others with Darren, and it's just amazing to kind of hear people saying, I believe I can change the world through blockchain gaming. And what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so we're a little bit involved with YGG as well, and from one angle, but we also had a number of scholars and players and whatnot. A couple of years ago, we started that up. I love that it gives people the opportunity to make more money than that they could make in their own economy, if I can call it that. So, if a Filipino rice farmer can go and make $50 a day or $30 a day and gross $1,000 in a month, compared to the 150 working on a rice farm, I think that's a wonderful opportunity for them. I think where the play to earn games have failed is the simplicity behind them. There's not enough to it. You got to do something, sort of use your brain to earn money at the end of the day, not just press buttons and hope for the best. That said, it gives people the chance to go and buy those NFTs and have those scholars playing, so we can buy NFTs and earn yield from them at the end of the day, which is like buying a house and earning yield rent from the house. So we can promote into the economy. People can earn money, and there's 2.5 million Filipinos who have been onboarded to crypto that now are starting to use crypto as their form of transactional basis in McCarthy or SIBA or wherever else. So I think the diversity of wealth throughout the world can be shortened a little bit by onboarding more people into sort of this technology and letting them play and do something. I think there should be an evolution. We've invested in a couple, one in India. It's a Cricket World Cup type game with 30 million monthly active users. They're going to move it to a play to earn model. And I think that's a game that Indians, well, Australians as well, we love cricket, don't get me wrong, but now can actually play something they enjoy and could earn $30 a day by doing it. This is a wonderful opportunity. It's a bit like going to Fiverr. I used to do gigs on Fiverr back in the day, and I was good at doing something and I got paid to do it. So congratulations to me and earning a living. I think it gives people opportunity to move beyond, because if you're in a certain level of society economically, it's impossible to get in front. No doubt about it in a capitalist world. So it gives people their own entrepreneurial way through, that others like myself can invest and also earn yield on these NFTs that I got as well. And the whole ecosystem can grow. Just again, what's amazing about the crypto world is that tokenomics is so minusculely detailed, analyzed, looking for holes in the economic theory behind it. It can crash, i.e. Terra Luna, if there's a way that hedge funds can get involved, or it can be hacked, i.e. by when Axie Infinity got hacked. We are open and transparent, and it opens up defenses. So again, centralization, decentralization, we want one thing, but we need to protect from the other thing. Where's the right balance? But I love the space, and I love the space because it gives people opportunity, and it gives us a chance to educate them and bring them out of the level of society they're in, if I can say that ever so gently and kindly.
Tim, literally, this is really one of the most fabulous conversations because you're so open and honest with what you guys are working on, and you have such a wide breadth of kind of work that you're doing in the asset class and you've done for so long. So with kind of the knowledge that you have, the connections that you have, and the innovation of which you guys have pushed forward, what are some things that in and around Web3 that aren't your own, that you may be interested in kind of sharing from a alpha drop perspective?
So I think there's a big opportunity on collateralized Bitcoin or Ethereum and taking USDT as a loan. Now, obviously, the way it's been set up at the moment is it's like a decentralized peer-to-peer network of I'll put my Bitcoin up, I'll put my USDT up, and I don't know if that's the best way to do it. Mind you, I think it was all the RV and all them. They during the Terra Luna fiasco, all those DeFi ones, nothing changed because everyone was paid out transparently on a smart contract. So I like that space. I like the financial area of not everyone wants to use their Bitcoins, and so how can you leverage them to your own benefit in that sense? And we've found we're building one called Borrow.io. Literally, put your Bitcoins up, take USDT, do what you need to do, which may or may not include putting a bet on the football. But that's a separate arm's length sort of operation. What I really like is Zappa.fi. I think what they're doing, it's really, really cool. And it's almost like you're creating your own financial portal, but obviously connected with your NFT galleries, and you're connected with your MetaMask or your Wallet Connect. And I'm looking at what they're doing and thinking, well, hang on, for our high rollers or our whales, how can I create something like that? And to the extent, what is a casino VIP player? What do they want? Well, they want to be entertained. They want to try and break the house, but they don't mind losing because it's entertainment at the same time. If we could then provide them with this sort of private member club, and then inside that, which they're connecting through an NFT from playing a lot, we give them banking, we give them trading, we give them investment opportunities. So from our venture capital, we're invested in some pretty cool assets that wouldn't be open to the general public. But if you're one of our whales, then you're part of this club, we will open up the chance to invest and take equity in there as well. And really try and how do we give a silver glove or white glove service to our best players, which is not gambling related. It's more financial health and growth and wealth creation coming from, again, our experience. So I think there's so much more can be done with that. And this is where the NFTs, I look at NFT, it's a key. In essence, it will unlock access to something, and the metadata, if you don't continue to do what you need to do, the metadata will stop you having access to that, or you can sell your key to someone else for a perceived premium value. And that's what I love about it. I love Zrun. I think it's an amazing site. I think their execution could be a little bit better if they finally did a deal with me, but that's beside the point. What they're doing with the horses and the gaming and the sort of the NFTs and the breeding and sort of, if you look at the hereditary, what we call the bloodlines of horses, this is what blockchain does. You can guarantee and look back through the genealogy or the bloodline of a horse and all the metadata on what horse runs good and runs bad, and then you can run a book on it, and you can then have these futuristic graphics. I'm then thinking I can advertise on here as well and put sportsbet.io up there, and every market participant can do what they want to do, and I'll pay for my advertising, which will end up funding the cost of the horse races, which the people who own the horses who have them can race them and try and win money from their horses. It's a different way of thinking about it, and I love connecting those dots around there.
I want to also point out something you said, and it was around utility. That if there's no utility, if there's nothing you're doing, then it's just for fun. And everything that you just described, you're trying to give real world utility. And we always talk about, cryptocurrencies is great, but if you're in a third world country of which you're not allowed to have banking, can you buy bread? And in Africa, they're kind of going around the banks, and merchants are willing to accept Bitcoin as a currency, and that makes it real. We had an issue in other parts of the country. They're just not there yet. And so you can have, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of cryptocurrency, but if you can't buy a loaf of bread with it, you're missing a big point. And I love the fact that your guys are connecting those lines and really thinking about it from that utility perspective.
But I think there's an issue here, like Bitcoin, and I love the simplicity of Bitcoin, and I love that it doesn't grow and get bigger and do forks and whatever else. I think it's just a very simple working protocol that will always be there. But it's very hard to buy a cup of coffee with Bitcoin at the end of the day. Now, our cafe we here have the office, we accept USDC and we recommend the sequence wallets because it's the fastest, it's the easiest, and it's at the lowest fees. Because guess what? When people pay €6 for a ham and cheese sandwich, they don't want to pay $1.80 on top for the privilege of paying in crypto. They want to. This is on the ticket. It was cents on the pennies on the dollar to move millions of dollars. Well, then let's be true to that. I don't want high gas fees. So this is where I think Lightning really comes into it and opening up those payment channels and that layer above the core fundamental Bitcoin protocol there. And Lightning works. And we've actually built a new wallet called iStream, and it's the first crypto wallet which has its own Lightning node on the phone itself. But then to do that, we needed to have obviously open up payment channels. So we've now built another thing called a Lightning LSP, a Lightning Service Provider. So we can help open up those payment channels. It's difficult chicken and the egg problem, but I think given our user base and our knowledge and our enthusiasm for growing this, we enjoy being a part of growing up this Lightning network and making it work so you can go and buy a slice of pizza. I know the Bit Refill guys for many, many years, and they're very heavy into it as well. But guess what? I used to use them. I'd get off a plane somewhere. I'd go to Bit Refill, get my SIM card I've got. I'd do my top up with crypto. And by the time I got my baggage from the baggage carousel, my phone was working. Good to go. Thanks very much. And that was just a crypto payment to the Bit Refill, and there's my phone, good to go. So maybe we need to look in Africa, which is mobile minutes is such an important commodity for people there. How do we bring crypto in line with solving real world problems?
Yep. No, and that really is what it has to be. Is I think you summed it up right there. Cryptocurrency has to solve real world problems. Otherwise, we're just playing a video game and we're just having fun. So yep. I love that. Tim, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it from all of yWhales. We're excited to have you as a member and really excited to kind of continue to watch the growth of this in a variety of ways and YOLO support as well. So
look, I'm very, very excited to have joined yWhales as well. And like we said the other day, I'm looking forward to the first in-person conference, and I hope you have one this side of the pond or in Dubai or something, because it'd be great to catch up, have dinner, and meet more of the yWhale network. And I don't know, I just call as I see it, and I love being part of communities that think beyond where we are right now, and I think yWhales is that perfect platform for that. So thanks for having me on today. I've really enjoyed it.
I love it, and I think you've made a really strong case for us to have a meetup in Estonia.
Good.
I think a few more of our members, if you let us know what the taxes are like for crypto purchases, we may you may see a few of us, because Spain, Portugal just screwed us all over. So
yes, indeed.
All right,
very good.
yWhales, we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Jake. Cheers.